Tonight's program, to frame the agenda for tonight, first is, and we're going to have dueling podiums here. I'll present some information, and I'll throw it over to Diane, and she'll spend some time, and certainly if there's anything either one of us want to add to our piece, we will do that. So we want to first talk a little bit, just set the stage, general overview of the Governor Mifflin School District, and general overview of some key financial information, specifically to the 2019-2020 proposed budget that is in front of our school board over the next few weeks and into June for final approval. Then the second phase, and what we've done as a format the last 4 years, is answer your pre-submitted questions. And we intentionally send home a postcard every year. It gets mailed to every resident, every household in our district, with an opportunity to submit questions ahead of time. And while there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions throughout the program this evening, we also have found by giving the opportunity for people to pre-submit questions, it gives us then the opportunity to make sure that we're able to get the factual information needed to be able to best answer your questions versus getting questions on the fly. So I think you will find that that this evening. Likewise, with answering your questions, what we've also done the last few years, Melissa Fullerton, who's our Director of Communications and Community Relations, she does a great job in always videotaping these sessions, and then she segments the video clips and the graphics to the questions, and they then reside on our district website. So, there might be some things here tonight. You look, I forget what they were talking about there, that you're able to go onto our website, and you'll see past years archived on that site as well. And then in addition, if there are neighbors or friends or whatever, please invite them to visit the website for information that resides on the website. And then lastly, I use the Moynihan quote, everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion, just not their own facts. And as a former social studies teacher, who my main mission and charge was to develop good citizens, I was very much a stickler for everybody. I expect people to develop and strengthen your own opinion, but you have to do it with a factual basis. So I see, certainly in the age of social media, I see a lot of misinformation. I see a lot of incorrect information. And as part of the drive, if you will, that I have to do sessions like this to make sure that facts are presented. So then, then everyone's entitled to their opinion, but at least then the facts are presented. So with that, so real quick fast facts to set the stage for the context. What I want to impress upon everybody is the scale of our organization. We are a very large organization. When you think about from the amount of students and the amount of staff, this year we are serving 4,300 students on a daily basis, pre-K through grade 12. And we say pre-K because that is new to the district over the last few years. That is through state funding. So the pre-K programs that we run in our Coomer Elementary School are 100% funded through PDE. And then I say age 21 because we have students that are identified for special needs that in the law they're entitled to an education up through age 21. So I know many times we may think traditionally of grade 12, everybody graduates. That's not the case for students, more of students of higher needs that need additional time for transition work out into adulthood. So we have students that will be here in our schools or in other out-of-district placements until they're age 21. 45% of our students receive free and reduced lunch. That is an indicator of socioeconomic status. We were 43% last year, and 10 years ago we were 20%. So just to show you, what societally, socially has changed and evolved just within 10 years of time. Again, to represent the scale of our organization, we are a $72 million budget. So you can imagine $72 million annually. It's important that we have very sharp people like Diane working, monitoring the financial aspects of that size of a budget. We have 800 plus full-time, part-time, and stipended employees. Many times when we talk about school districts, sometimes you hear talk about teachers or administrators, but we cannot forget the amount of support staff that we also have in our district supporting the educational process. And then stipended employees many times are extracurricular, athletic, music, advisors that also support education programming, and 31,000 residents. So the way I kind of like to look at this is I'm the CEO of an organization that has a $72 million annual budget, almost 800 employees, 31,000 shareholders, doing what I think is the most important work that a community can do, and that's educating its children. So when you put the 4,300 and the 800 together, we have 5,000 people that are coming every day onto a 100-acre campus to do their very best work in the teaching and learning process. And also a couple other important pieces, 33% of our households, only 33% of our households have children in the district, and the median age of our resident is just shy of 44 years. So one of the things we like to show also is how does Governor Mifflin School District stack up locally? There are 18 school districts that are within the geopolitical boundaries of Berks County. So of the 18 Berks County school districts, Diane and I are going to show you a couple key pieces of comparative data, because I know sometimes as residents we like to see, so I see these numbers, but what does that mean to our neighbors through the county? So as I shared earlier, we're 4,300 students. Should also note that that number changes daily. We see, not only as we see things changing in education, we see a greater rate of mobility of our students and our families moving in and out of the district. A number that I watch or ask for every now and then is how many students move in or out of the district after the school year begins. Because many times we think about families, that they move here, their kids start in kindergarten, and they go all the way up through until they graduate. We're in the hundreds in terms of students that are moving in and out. We just had a student enroll. Where's Sue? Sue knows. We have students enrolling this week with 5 weeks left of school. So our enrollment, we're the fourth largest. First, certainly the City of Reading School District. Second is Boyertown. Even though Boyertown straddles, half is in Montgomery County, half is in Berks County. Third is the Wilson School District, and then fourth is Governor Mifflin. Fifth is Exeter. So just to give you an idea of some of the districts. So we are the fourth largest enrollment, but we are the fifth largest budget. So in the current 18-19 school year, our budget is just over $71 million. The $72 million I showed you earlier was relative to what's projected for 19-20. So fourth largest budget, or fourth largest enrollment, fifth largest budget. In regards to per pupil spending, we're 16th out of 18 school districts. Last year we were 14th. So last year we ranked 14th in per pupil. This year we're at 16th. 17 is Reading, 18 is Muhlenberg School District. At a figure of just over $16,000 per student.
So now we're going to start talking a little bit about the numbers that we have projected for 19-20 school year. The school board at their first meeting in May, this next coming Monday, will be approving the proposed final budget. The final budget gets approved the second meeting, I think it's June 17th, but the second meeting, which is the third Monday of June, that's when the final budget will get approved. But of that budget, what will be presented in May for the board is revenue of $72 million, expenses of $72.8 million, and a deficit of $844,000. And we'll talk a little bit more about each of those numbers as we go through. As part of that proposed budget, we are also proposing a half-mil increase or a 1.8% increase, which is exactly what we did last year as well, a half-mil increase. So what does that mean for the average homeowner here and or for most of our residents? Our average assessed value, which comes from the assessment office in our homestead properties, the average assessed value is $124,000. So a half-mil for the average homeowner is $62 a year increase, or $5, a little over $5 a month. I also analyzed all of the assessed values and what 75%, so 3 out of 4 of our households, what is their assessed value? And it is $150,100 or less. So it's pretty amazing, like when you go around the district, I am sure most of you, if you had to guess as to what you thought the vast majority of our properties were and the assessed values, because we do have pockets of very affluent houses, but the overall property value is $150,000 or less for 3 out of 4 of our residents. And that amounts to $75 a year or a little over $6 a month. Where do we stand in comparison? I don't know how well you can see all the school districts across the bottom, but obviously Governor Mifflin is exactly in the middle of the 18. We are 9th of the 18. This is the 18-19 millage because not all of the districts has proposed what their 19-20 will be. The average for the current year is 29 mills, and we are at 28.1. So you will see that, again, we are right in the middle. Interesting thing is, which I don't know that a lot of people know, is that a mill at every district is very different. So let's talk about that a little because I think it bears to explain why Antietam might be all the way up here at almost 40 mills. A value of a mill for them is about $250,000. That respectively to a value of a mill in Wilson, which is $2.5 million. So there is a huge disparity, and just to give you some comparisons for Governor Mifflin, 1 mill brings in $1.5 million. So it is you understand a little bit more when you're trying to figure out how to balance your budget and bring in additional revenues. Antietam has to add a whole lot more mills to bring in some additional revenue than Wilson and some of these others who have huge assessed values and property values within their district. So it makes a big difference and tells a little bit more about the picture of what you might be seeing and why. But we are right in the middle. So let's talk a little bit about the revenue. So this pie chart shows, and I don't know if you can see because this blue area is the local revenue. So we are a district very dependent upon our local revenue, and I need to get to my slide so I can see the number. We are $52 million, or 73% of our revenue comes from local sources. Here is the state piece, so you can see the 26%, or $18.9 million that comes from the state. Then we have $950,000 that comes from federal sources, or 1%, and this little $25,000 is money that gets transferred from our food service operations back to the general fund. So as we've highlighted here, the state average just for suburban school districts similar to ours, is that their local sources is 69%. So you will see, even in comparison to other districts across the state, unfortunately, we are more reliant upon our local taxes than the state average. And the state revenue for us is less than a lot of the other suburbans. They're at 29% and we're at 26%. And that 3%, unfortunately, makes a difference. Steve's going to talk a little bit later on in the presentation about Equity First and some of the studies that have been done about underfunding and how some of the schools have become underfunded. So we're not going to get into that right now. But
and you might remember in this piece here, the Reading Eagle, not too long ago, did a piece where they talked about average, the districts, what they were getting from state, and we get, how do you want to say, where we don't get much help as much as other districts, as Diane. So that's an important point as we go through it, and how our district is funded by the state, and then what we need to rely on at a local level, especially when you'll see later in response to the mandates that we have to follow issued by the state of Pennsylvania.
So you'll see for 1920, we do have an increase of $1.7 million in our revenue, or a 2.4% increase over the prior year. And that is with the $500,000 increase, which brought in about $750,000 extra. Expenses, same kind of chart. What we've done here is broken it out by instruction, support services, non-instructional, and other. This large piece is the instruction. That's $43 million, or 59%. Instruction covers all of our classroom expenses. So everything related to the classrooms, which would be teachers, benefits, classroom supplies, textbooks. It also covers our special ed and their entire department and all the costs related to the special ed. Support services bring in $20 million, or 28% of our budget. Those are things such as, the biggest one is operations. The operations of our entire campus, all of our utilities, etc. It also includes administration. It includes such positions such as psychologists, libraries, speech therapists, nursing. That is all considered support services, not directly instruction. The non-instructional is this green piece, which is $1.9 million, or 3%. That is athletics, our activity funds, some of our clubs, and also our senior state rebate is also classified in there. And then, and then other is this piece, which is 10%, which is $7.2 million. 6.3 of that is our debt expense. So that's what's other. So again, we have increased our expenses by $1.75 million, or 2.5% over the prior year. The deficit, as we discussed in our initial slide, is $844,000. Last year's was in the mid-700s, so we are pretty equivalent to what the current year's budget is. What happens if we actually have a deficit, and at the end of the year our actual revenues are less than our actual expenditures? That money would come from our fund balance, and we're going to talk about that shortly, where I will actually go into a little bit more. In fact, I think it's next. So, fund balance, what is that? That's basically the reserves that the district keeps, basically like your savings account that you would have at your house. Right now, our unassigned balance is $5 million, which is 6.9% of our budget. So, two important facts. PDE actually mandates and keeps us under a threshold of what they think our unassigned fund balance should be, which is 8% for a budget of our size here at our district. So we are well below that 8% at 6.9%. But what to me is more telling is the fact of $5 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you take our budget of a little over $72 million, that $5 million is actually less than 1 month's expenses. And I will tell you that business norm is anywhere from 3 to 6 months of expenses to be deemed a company that has good financial standing and has got themselves positioned well, and we are less than 1 month of expenses with that $5 million. So we know fund balance is a topic of good discussion. People want to know why we have a fund balance. I will tell you the things that fund balance should be used for would be unexpected expenses, things that come up that we could not plan for, one-time capital purchases or projects. Superintendent will sometimes say, hey, is there money in the budget for this? If it's a one-time thing, it is very doable to take that out of fund balance if necessary. What you don't want to take out of fund balance is continuing operating expenses, because very quickly you will deplete your fund balance and have a really difficult time without overtaxing the community and trying to build that fund balance back up. So something that I am very cognizant of and keep aware of. This chart will show you a little bit about where our fund balance has been starting in 2011-12, you will see I'm at right around $7.5 million. You will see now we are below that with all of our fund balances combined. Again, you're probably having trouble seeing some of the colors. But this first section is the blue section, which is monies that were committed for the PSERS increases that have, in these beginning years, we're taking a much bigger swing than they are right now. They're still increasing, but they're not increasing as great as they were in these years. And we have reduced that fund balance way down to just a little over $1 million right now in committed.
And
This-
PSERS is the pension contribution obligated by districts to contribute to.
This red piece is our unassigned, and then this little green piece is other. Right now, what we are required to do by accounting is the other is assigned fund balance, and when we have budget a deficit, we are required to assign and put aside that much money from the fund balance to prove that we can sustain. So that's what that green is. But you will see that we are actually right around the 7 million mark versus the 7.5 million. So we are not a district that is growing its fund balance and pocketing money. We have actually decreased our fund balance, but we need to keep it within reasonable limits so as not to completely diminish our savings and what we would need to go forward. Also, 3-4 years ago, when the state held our budget, and it took them, I'm going to say 9 months, so maybe a little less, to give us that money. Our district here actually survived off of its fund balance and cash flows and did not have to borrow money. And there were a lot of districts that actually had to go out and borrow money to continue their operations and pay their bills. And we, because of our fund balance and being fiscally responsible, were able to use our fund balance to sustain us and did not have to borrow. So it's another reason, unfortunately, the state has us kind of hand-locked with the budget when they don't pass it on time.